Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the agenda for public hearing on the 2018-2019 school budget. Ms. Haley, can we have roll call?
Mr. Fiocchi? Mr. Holmes?
Here.
Mr. Jennings?
Present.
Mr. Medio?
Present.
Mr. Sabrana?
Present.
Ms. Spinelli?
Present.
Mr. Ulrich?
Present.
Ms. Acosta?
Here.
Mr. Boardley?
Here. In compliance with the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law, commonly referred to as the Sunshine Law, the Vineland Board of Education has caused notice and posting of this meeting to be sent to the following: announcing time and place thereof, agenda, etc. The Daily Journal, SNJ Today, the Press of Atlantic City, Nuestra Comunidad, Visto Bueno, the Clerk for the City of Vineland, and the Administration Office Public Bulletin Board. Please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Haley, take it away.
Okay.
Watch yourselves, guys. That's coming down.
Watch your head.
Bob. We're gonna
It's like
scalp
when I
you.
hit a ball, Bob, you gotta watch.
It would have hit you. I think it would have got you, regardless.
Okay. All right. Hopefully this is all right.
If I didn't have enough, I'd be out there.
Good evening. My name is Helen Haley. Is this on or no?
No.
Oh.
Huh?
I don't know.
Smack it.
I don't know how to do it.
No, not that way. There you go, the other way.
Hello? Testing? Okay. Oh, I need it closer. Okay. Juggling act here. Okay. Good evening. My name is Helen Haley, and I'm the business administrator. Let me start over here. Okay.
Helen, you might want to hold it. Nobody else
Okay.
can hear.
Good evening. My name is Helen Haley, and I'm the business administrator. Tonight, we're going to go over the fiscal year 2018-2019 budget. I have a list of dates that show what transpired in the whole budget process. In the beginning, in October, we met with the Finance Committee to discuss details of the 2018-19 budget, and then we met again on January 31st. During that time, we also met with each board member to discuss the preliminary details of the budget in mid-January. We met or shared the budget detail with the board members that were not on the Finance Committee. And then November 17th through January 2018, different people from our finance department, mostly Scott Musterell and David Hart, met with transportation, maintenance, special education principals and supervisors to review their budgets. On January 31st, we presented a balanced budget to the Finance Committee. And then the last presentation that I did was on March 14th. And at that point, we had not received our state aid yet. The state aid was released the next day on March 15th. So there's a few important dates this year, and it's a little different than it's been in the past. This time, we did the presentation before the aid. The aid was released a lot later than normal. Usually the aid is released towards the end of February, very early March. But because there's a new governor, it's delayed. So the aid was released on the 15th. So we did this with flat funding at this point. So on the 15th, we received our state aid. On the 15th, and you might have read this in the paper, it showed that we received $417,121 over last year. In a way, that's a misnomer, because if you remember, in July of 2017, our state aid was decreased. So our budget was already passed, but the state decreased our state aid by over $2 million. So by giving us $417,000 more, that was more than a reduced amount. So we were still behind by $1.6 million in state aid from our original budget last year. On 3/16, we met with the Finance Committee to discuss how we should allocate that $417,000. And then on 3/28, we had our board meeting to approve the budget to submit to the county. At that point, the budget incorporated the changes that we had with the $417,121. Prior to the meeting, just a few hours before the meeting, we received a letter via email from the Acting Commissioner of Education indicating that the $2 million that was cut from our fiscal year 2018 budget was going to be reinstated as aid and not as a loan. During July, when we were told that we were reduced $2 million, we appealed it, and we wanted to have it reinstated as state aid. Unfortunately, they got back to us and said, you're going to have it as a loan, you can pay it back over 10 years. There were 27 districts that applied to have it reinstated, and only 3 were denied, making it a loan. We were one of 3, the other one was Millville and East Orange. So because of that, we budgeted $205,979 in the fiscal year 2019 budget, because that would be our first of 10 payments. But then, when we got the letter, we found out it's no longer a loan, it's going to be aid. So we could remove the $205,979 from the budget. And again, that was like very last minute news, but we had that board meeting, and we reduced the tax levy, the proposed tax levy, from 4% to 3%, because that difference is it's around $260,000, so this made up for most of it. On 3/29, that was the deadline to submit the budget. So the budget that was approved on the 28th was submitted to the county, and that night, around 5:30, we received an email again with a new letter. And so I wrote, after submitting the budget, we received an email stating that our fiscal year 2018-19 aid would be equal to the fiscal 2017-18 state aid prior to the reduction, which equates to reinstating the entire $2,059,792. So there's 2 pieces to that. The $417,121 that was in the state aid that was released on the 16th, and now, to make us whole, $1,642,671, and they're calling it emergency aid. So essentially, it's flat funding from before the reductions in last July. On 3/29, in between 3/29 and 4/24, the county has that time to review everyone's budget. Our budget was approved by them on April 13th. On 4/9 and 4/19, we met with the Facilities Committee first, and then the Finance Committee, to discuss the reinstatement of the $1.6 million in state aid, and to decide what we should do with that. We decided that since we were applying a lot of budgeted fund balance to the fiscal year 2019 budget, that we would put $1 million back into that fund balance, so that way there's less of an impact on fiscal year 2020. The other $642,671 we appropriated, and I will give you the details in a few more slides. And that leads us to tonight, our public hearing, and then we will vote on the final budget on May 2nd. This slide just shows that revenue minus appropriations equals a balanced budget. Revenue is comprised of state aid, the local tax levy, basically other revenue, extraordinary aid, semi-aid, which is special ed aid, the use of fund balance, which I'll explain later, and the use of capital reserve and maintenance reserve. This shows our whole revenue side of the budget. The total budget is $199,952,303. Of that amount, $135,167,969 was the state aid that we knew about when we submitted the budget on 3/29. As you can see in the increase-decrease column, the state aid increased by $417,121. That's all we knew at the time, but like I said, that night we found out about $1.6 million. We could not change the budget at that time because it was already submitted, the deadline passed, and we after the approval from the county, we had to advertise this budget right here. The local tax levy, as I said, is an increase of 3% from what we had last year. And then the other parts of this just talk about our other income and the special revenue equals all of our grants and budgeted fund balance. I'll go over that a little bit later, you can see there's an increase of $4,393,000 of budgeted fund balance. And then we have maintenance reserve. During the year of fiscal year 2018, we applied $290,000 of $400,000 of maintenance reserve, and now we're applying the other $110,000. So after this, we will not have any maintenance reserve. Okay, here's the breakdown of budgeted fund balance. What happens is at the end of each fiscal year, there's unspent money, because you do a budget is a projection, and things just don't come out exactly to your projection. So at the end of fiscal year 2018, we ended up with, they call it surplus, of $8,737,956. I'm sorry, that was at the end of 2016. At the end of 2017, we had unspent money of $7,420,821. And we have, it's mandatory that we apply that to a future year, meaning the next consequential year, which is, so 2017 has to be applied to 2019. But as you can see, our surplus is getting less and less because we're budgeting tighter and tighter, so each year that number will go down. The next number is something that we decided to apply from anticipated surplus for 2018. So we said we're probably going to end up with maybe $5 million this year instead of $7 million. Let's apply $3 million of that to 2019. Now that helps to close the gap, but it also impacts 2020 when we're trying to do that budget. We won't have that to apply. You'll see later, though, that we reduced that number by that $1 million. So now we're only applying $2 million instead of $3 million from this year's. The next section is state homeless tuition. We received 69 students from Puerto Rico this year, so they're considered homeless students, but they're not homeless within New Jersey. So when there's a student that comes here outside of our state, the state reimburses us approximately $10,000 per student. So we're applying that to next year, rolling it forward. And then the last number is the $2,059,792 that we just talked about. We knew we were getting that money one way or another, whether we were getting it as a loan or we were getting it as state aid. And because it's cash, either way it's cash coming in. And it comes in so late in the year that we did not spend it or appropriate it in 2018. So we just rolled that forward and applied it to 2019 as well. This shows a visual of how much state aid comes from, how much of our total revenue comes from state aid. There's 77.3% of our revenue that's from state aid. That has gone down. It used to be around 80%. This is another visual that shows the comparison of state aid to the local tax levy to our fund balance. And again, state aid is our biggest portion of our revenue. This is a tax rate comparison. You'll see in 1998, the school portion of the taxes was 31%. But over the years, the school portion has gone down, and the city and the county have gone up. So we went from 31% of the total tax rate to 22%. And the city went from 22 to 34, and the county went from 35 to 43. So we are falling behind in the total picture. Here's the same comparison with tax rates, but for 2015, 16, and 17. You'll see that between 15 and 16, the school tax went up 1.5 cents, whereas the city went up 0.3 cents and the county went up 7.7 cents. The comparison last year was we went up 1.8 cents, the city went up 5.8 cents, and the county went up 1.8 cents. Overall, it was 9.5 cents and 9.4 cents, but the components changed somewhat. We stay relatively the same. But both of those years, we had a 2% tax increase. Now for the appropriations side, that's the expenditure side of the budget. And the items that go up the most are salaries, health benefit, premiums, charter school tuition, and technical school tuition. So when we say we have a shortfall, we don't have a deficit. People sometimes refer to it as a deficit. It's really a shortfall because no matter what, when the numbers roll forward, those items go up. So if you have flat funding, then you're already behind just because these expenses go up. This next slide shows the appropriation side and our different funds. One fund I'd like you to notice, well, we have Fund 10, which is made up of the first two lines of the budget. But if you notice, charter schools takes up a big portion of our budget. We budget $5.9 million for charter schools, and it went up from last year's budget by 13%. The actual has gone up about 12%. The goal is to balance programmatic and the financial sides of the budget. The budget approach, as we said, we started out with a $10 million shortfall, and that's a projection of where we started, and when we roll over all those things that I said go up, salaries, benefits, charter schools, and so forth, and flat funding and revenue items that don't repeat themselves. Like last year, we had $1.1 million in revenue that we budgeted for sale of buildings. We don't have buildings to sell this year, so right there we're behind 1.1. So it's a combination of things that total the $10 million. We meet with the principals and supervisors to maintain a flat, non-salary budget. We analyze class size and staffing. We reduce positions through attrition, consolidation, and enrollment-based staffing equalization. We try to preserve student opportunities, keep class size within state guidelines, and maintain a thorough and efficient learning environment. And we also have started to really pursue shared service agreements. You'll see on our upcoming agenda in May that there are several there, and we're continuing to pursue them. This shows the position reductions that are going to be in the fiscal year 2018-19 budget. We have a total of 54 reductions. Again, we try to do that through attrition and consolidation. The first one is 20 regular bus driver positions, because those routes are being outsourced. The teachers, we're reducing teaching positions by 16 positions through redistricting and consolidation. As I said, we look at class size and many other factors. Because we fill positions with short-term contracts, we are able to eliminate those positions, and that way people don't lose their jobs. So the 16 would be coming from positions that are filled by temporary people. We're reducing the kindergarten aides by 3, and that's due to redistricting. Special ed staff is being reduced by 5. We reduced a personnel clerk. We reduced a communications technician due to retirement. 2 clerks, a nurse because Loiter's closing. There's a net decrease in custodians of 1. And we have, because of the $417,000 that we received, we looked into security and having armed guards. So based on that budget, we're cutting 4 unarmed guard positions, and those are open positions. In dollars, that equates to $3,173,943. So right there, that chips away at that $10 million shortfall. So that you see the salary piece and the benefit piece. The new positions in the budget are 1 assistant principal, 8 bus attendants, 1 supervisor of armed guards, and part-time armed guards. The non-salary reductions are from out-of-district special ed tuition, the expiration of the synergistic contract, and capital outlay. Those are some of the larger ones that have gone down. Non-salary increases. Charter school does increase each year. It had been running about 10% increase, and now it's about 12%. So so that's another thing that makes the budget shortfall, $713,000. The charter school gives us a projection. We don't really go by their projections because usually they come in around 12%, and theirs is a little bit higher. VOTEC tuition, that has increased by $985,202. So again, that contributes to the shortfall as well. Another non-salary increase is special ed education one-to-one nurses. The principal and interest payment on the lease purchase of the synthetic turf. If you remember, we're financing both the turf field and a phone system. The first year payment was just the phone system, and the next 4 is the phone system and the synthetic turf. So this is the first of 4 payments for synthetic turf. Utilities, we're increasing that just based on historical numbers by $327,500. The transportation budget is going up by $703,655. Cunningham, we did do an RFP for Cunningham Academy, and again, they were the only responder, and we are increasing their services. At this point, all the staff will be theirs, except for a secretary and a security guard. So it's kind of a swap between their fee versus our expenses, and we come out a little bit on the better side, but Cunningham goes up itself. Food service contribution, that's how much we have to move from the general fund to food service because food service does still run at a deficit, and it's about between $125,000 and $150,000. That's mostly due to our employees. We have the salaries and benefits relating to them. Additional expenses related to armed guards. That's non-salary items that relate to the armed guard budget. Other information that I thought would be informative. Our health insurance premiums, we're budgeting a blended increase of 7.1%. The charter school tuition has gone up. The charter school tuition as a part of our budget, as I mentioned before, is $5.9 million. Vocational tuition represents around $2.4 million. So just the tuition for out of district in those two areas is $8.3 million of our budget. The revenue side, the changes in the revenue side, we're proposing a local tax levy increase of 3%, which equals 2.3 cents. And the other budgeted revenue items that have gone up or down are transportation revenue from other LEAs. We now host the Cumberland County Transportation Co-op, so we receive some money because we do that service. Rental income, we started renting out office spaces. In 2018, we rented out part of the warehouse to New Jersey Youth Corps. And now we're going to add another lease of our Wood Street building. We were donated the Wood Street building, and we've fixed it up, and now we have a tenant that's going to be moving in towards the end of June. And that's roughly the increase in lease revenue from that. Bus advertising, we do advertise on our buses. We received about almost $20,000 last year. So we like to be conservative. We're only budgeting an increase of $5,000. Special education tuition revenue, we bring in students into our district because some other schools maybe don't have that service, so they pay us tuition. That's going up $88,000. Anticipated homeless revenue. This is not the students from Puerto Rico, but this is our normal, the regular homeless population that we have. That's decreasing. Other revenue projections, such as a miscellaneous group of items. I had mentioned the sale of school property. Last year we budgeted $1.1 million because we were selling buildings. This year we're not selling buildings, but we're selling $50,000 worth of buses. So that's a decrease on the revenue side that we had to fill in some other way. And then the bottom two numbers represent the fund balance changes. The $1.3 million is what I was talking about, the mandatory portion, which is the surplus that is at the end of each year. So the difference between the surplus of 2016 versus 17 was $1.3 million less. And we're going to keep experiencing a lesser and lesser number because we're making the budget tighter and tighter, and this year we're applying some of it to 2019. The bottom number, the $5.7 million, I went over that in a previous slide, and that's made up of what we're taking from the 2018 budget and putting into 2019, plus the loan that we just got the money for that's now reinstated aid. Okay, like I said, something new happened on March 29th. On March 29th, we received a letter from the acting commissioner stating that we would receive emergency aid to reinstate our state aid to the level prior to the reduction of the $2,059,792 in July 2017. The reinstatement was in two separate forms. The $417,121 was included in the state aid amounts on 315. So on the earlier slide where I showed you the revenue, that's what we found out about on 315. And then when we made the presentation, well, when we voted on the budget on 328, that was included in the budget. That's included in the advertised budget. That's included in the budget that was submitted to the county. The next number, the 1.6, came in later, and that was classified as emergency aid in the letter on 329. Now, in the letter, it does state it's pending final adoption by legislature and governor and approval by the director of the office management and budget. So hopefully they don't take any aid away like happened last year after the fact. Once we received that letter of the $1.6 million, we scheduled meetings with the Facilities Committee and the Finance Committee to talk about what should we do with that $1.642671. And what we came up with is the allocation is going to go to some Gatone projects, the Gatone press box replacement, bleacher replacement, and waterproofing. That's $400,000. Enhanced security capital outlay of $25,000. We're increasing the Armed Guards budget slightly more by $67,671. And synergistic, that that agreement ends in September. We're putting 150,000 in because we have to predict what it will be between now and then, and we want to make sure we have enough to cover it. And then we said, we've already taken $3 million from our fund balance, our surplus from 2018. Let's take that down to $2 million. So that $1 million is now staying in fund balance. So that's the total, $1,642,671. Now, one thing that has to be done is when you have an advertised budget and you change that budget between the advertised budget and the public hearing and the vote, which is on May 2nd, you need to discuss items at the public hearing in order to incorporate them into the budget that you're going to vote on. So the purpose of this slide is to be informative, but also to meet that requirement. That these items here were discussed with Facilities and Finance, and they are going to be incorporated into the budget that we put forward on May 2nd. Here's the detail of the capital outlay budget. On 3/28, when we submitted the budget to the county, those were the detailed items in that. After we got the 1.6, we added, like I said, the 3 Gatone projects, and we increased the enhanced security by $25,000. The other thing I want to say, let me go back to the previous slide. One thing about this is you do have to be cautious because you don't know what the state will do because they're calling this emergency aid. So if by chance they did take it away, the majority of these items are one-time deal type items that would have to be pushed forward if that happens. We're hopeful that that will not happen. We're continuing the lease purchase financing. What we do with that is we put the financing piece out to bid, and banks bid on that, and then the money goes into an escrow account. And then we, on the other side, we go out and we purchase buses, vehicles, whatever, either on state contract or through the bidding process. And by separating the two, you get a better interest rate because we get a municipal rate, which is 2 or 3%, whereas if we went and financed the vehicle through a vendor, it might be 5% or something like that. So it works out better when we separate the two items and the vendors that are familiar with that item bid on it. So the items that we want to finance over 5 years are the 3 31-passenger wheelchair special ed buses, 3 24-passenger wheelchair special ed buses, 3 7-passenger vans, 1 box truck for the warehouse, and 1 security vehicle. These will be financed over 5 years, and all of these items have a useful life longer than 5 years. And the estimated interest rate will be 3%. The annual payment in the budget is $167,115 for these items. Here's a comparison of the tax impact. The first line is the general fund tax levy that's in our budget. It's an increase of $691,848, which is an increase of 3%. The next line is the ratables divided by 100 to get the tax rate that's listed below of 0.598 versus 0.621, which is an increase of 2.3 cents. On the average home assessed at $159,402, that's an increase of $37.23 a year. This is the same comparison that I had earlier, but now it adds the 2017-18 piece for the school. We don't know the portions for the city or the county, but you can see that ours is 2.3 cents. Compared to the previous 2 years, we increased by 2%. This year's 3%. And this last slide shows the same information, just in another format. The tax rate increase is 2.3 cents, which is $37.23 per year, $3.10 per month. The average house is assessed at $159,402, and it shows again the tax rates per 100 assessed value. We always like to point out that there's a senior tax freeze that's available for people that qualify for it, and that's the link where you can go and read about it. Last of all, I'd like to thank Scott Musterell, David Hart, and the business office for all their work on this budget. I could not do this without them. I'd also like to thank Dr. Guccio and Central Administration, the Board Finance Committee, I should add the Facilities Committee as well, the district-wide feedback, and community comments. That's the end of my presentation. Does the board have any questions?
Thank you, Helen. Sounds like a Van Halen concert. I think I have I have a question, but I gotta find it. Hold on a
Want me to
second.
come up there?
I'm on fire tonight. Oh, the senior tax freeze.
Yes.
Could we put that somewhere where everyone can see it? That, because, I mean, not everybody's
You know what?
watching this.
I should have said this. After this meeting, this will be posted on our website. This whole entire presentation will be on our website under the welcome section. So they can look through that, and that's the last slide, and it has the link. If they click on that link, well, on this one, if I clicked on it, it would go right to it. Otherwise, they can maybe just
Mr. President, maybe
cut and paste it.
I'm sorry, maybe the Daily Journal could post that somewhere for us so seniors could get an eye on that.
And the other thing is they should, we can't give out tax advice, so they really should talk to their accountant about this, but that's just an FYI, so they can go read about it.
Because we're all going to be there one day. Let's hope. Amen.
I don't think you reached that point
Thank
just yet,
you.
Chris.
So now,
Thank you, Mrs. Haley.
oh, you're welcome.
At this time, we'll open up the meeting for public comment. Public comment is just for the public budget, so it has to be a budgeted item for comments. Please state your name, and remember, we have a 5-minute time limit.
My name is Bonnie Martin. I'm a resident of Vineland. I have 3 children that were educated in Vineland schools. The youngest is my grandson that I adopted and I'm raising. He's in 6th grade in AMSA. I have 3 comments about the budget. The first one is I'm also a registered nurse of 30 years, an oncology nurse. I'm now retired. When I do watch the board meetings online, so just the fact that that people aren't here doesn't mean that your words aren't being heard and your comments. When I heard the news that we didn't have a nurse in every building in the school, it frightened me, because we're talking about security a lot in the board meetings, naturally, because of all of the school shootings that have happened, but the chances of a child dying of an asthma attack are far greater than a shooting incident. It's very concerning to me that there's not a school-certified nurse in the building at all times. I think that is what's required by the state. I don't feel comfortable with a nurse going from building to building. I wouldn't want that job as a nurse. And the fact that we have agency nurses. I was an agency nurse. I did agency nursing as a part-time position to make extra money. And I'm oncology certified nurse, and so I could deal with all the IV situations. But if there was a pediatric patient, I would have denied it, because that's outside of the realm of my practice. There are many BIATA nurses, I'm sure, that are pediatric nurses, but school nursing is a beast of a different color, and I want to support the nurses in the Vineland school system by saying out loud that we deserve to have school-certified nurses, and we deserve to have one in every building that meets the state guidelines. Nothing less is acceptable in my mind. My second comment about the budget is, and I'm not certain if this is something that has already been decided or is something that's is the redistricting of the AMSA program to the Johnstone School. My grandson is a second-year AMSA student in 6th grade, and while he will tell you that would be great to have his own school, because I've talked to him about it, and other parents will say that they think that's a great thing, I'm going to stand up and probably be the lone person to say that I disagree strongly that that's a good idea for students. If we said today that we were going to take all of the learning disabled children and put them in one building, the public would be in an uproar. It would leave a bad taste in our mouth. If we said we're going to put all hearing disabled children in one building, we all would be in an uproar. Well, because my grandson on his spare time likes to look through the computer and find out why Jupiter has a ring, or because he's curious about how many times Japan has apologized to the United States since World War II, doesn't mean that he should be separated from the student body. I want him to have a regular school experience. I want him to see the football players in the hall and the cheerleaders in their uniforms. I want him to be part of the pep club. I want him to have a full high school experience. So for right now, while he's in middle school, if the move is made to Johnstone School, I will have to reconsider after he is close to 10th grade, 9th grade, because socialization skills, especially for an adolescent, are so very important. They can mean the difference between him being a socially awkward person because of his ability to learn so quickly and his vocabulary being so far above average, or being a regular kid that enjoys being with the kids that he went to school with at Petway that are not in the AMSA program that he eats lunch with every day. Those kinds of things that I model at home about empathy, kindness, forgiveness, conflict resolution can all be used at school. After I teach it and model it, it's his time in school to go and demonstrate his ability to do those things, to stay away from trouble, to understand who are the troublemakers, to choose good friends. Those things are all part of an education, good education. It's the reason I chose public education over private education. My first child, who's 35 now, was taught for the first 5 years of her life in private school. And I consciously made the decision to move her to public school because I want her to learn to live within the public. I wanted her to understand that not everyone has their own bathroom in their bedroom. I wanted her to understand that not everyone has a TV in every room. I want my children to learn how to live within the public and have good, sound social abilities. That's part of a good education. My third comment is on security. I know we're all frightened because of the school shootings. They're horrendous. They chill me to the bone, but I can find no scientific evidence that shows that having an armed security guard at a school is going to decrease the incidence of harm to our students. As a matter of fact, you know, as Americans, we value our money very much, and banks used to have armed guards in them. They don't anymore, nor do big corporations, and there's a reason for that, because the expenditure did not prove to be financially feasible. It did not prove to weigh out in the long run to be beneficial to the budget. In my opinion, more school security staff that are highly trained, which they're not right now in my opinion. My own grandson, who's 12 years old, said there was a problem in the cafeteria today, and I don't know why the security guard let it escalate. He waited until somebody put their hands on somebody else and the backpack was thrown in the trash. So I talked to my grandson about what are some ways that you could de-escalate an issue, how could you be of use, but that's not to be left to the children, that's to be left to the adults in the room. So I think that increasing the training about de-escalation, voice control, about using good sound abilities to keep order in the hallways and in the lunchrooms is a better use of our taxpayer dollars. I'm not opposed to having a tax increase. I understand that every year, my bills go up every year. My electric bill goes up, my grocery bill goes up. I have no problem paying extra for a good education for my kids. I want all kids in Vineland to have a good education. I think that that is one of the most important things that we can do as a society, but we also want our children to want to come back to Vineland, to not go off to college and leave. We want them to be able to be here. We want them to form bonds and close relationships. And so having a security guard that's the same regular security guard and not a part-time person that's going from building to building, that the kids know by name, that the guard gets to know them. It could be another adult mentor in the room for some children that just don't have that. So I'd like to see, I see a lot of numbers, and I'm going to be honest, I'm no math major. I'm an oncology nurse. I can figure out drug dosages, but when you show me finances like that, it's just beyond my comprehension. But I see a lot of spending on things that are not academics, things that are not going to benefit our children as a whole, all the children, because we're a community. And I think that it's important that kids learn to be part of this community. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mrs. Martin.
Vicki Miller. There's two things. On the budget, when we send children to the charter schools and they come back, do we get that money back? Like if they could only stay a month, 2 months?
Okay, how it works is every year we get a projected charter school tuition for each of the schools based on the enrollment that they're saying are going to be there. And we don't budget that number because that number typically is higher than actual, but we can't change that payment schedule. So from, let's say, September to maybe November, December, we have to pay on that payment schedule based on their projected enrollment. But on October 15th, we have the count. Like everybody counts their students on October 15th. It's called ASSA. At that point, the true numbers here, the true numbers at charter schools have to get reported. And then the state adjusts the tuition down. So then we start paying on usually a lesser number until the end of the year in June, another count gets submitted. Typically, the number is less again at that point. So then sometimes they owe us money at that point, and then they have 3 months to pay us back. So it is always trued up. There's a delay. So it's more of a cash flow thing. I think on their end, they get the cash up front, but we do get it back in the end once we get the official counts.
Okay. The second question, I agree with what Mrs. Martin said on the socialization. I talked about that before. The other thing is the police guards. I don't think there's a price on our children that we should put. If one person is saved because we have a security guard with a gun in the school, it's well worth it. One child, I say it's well worth it. What are our guards going to do? They're going to go too. They're going to run because they have no protection either. They go to the front door and somebody comes after. They're going to go like this? No. They're going to run along with the rest. We need that. That's all I got to say. That, you know, I was married to a policeman. I do not like guns. I'll tell you that right now. I didn't allow it in the house. He had to keep it in the car. But in this world, we need the safety of our children first. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak on the budget? Seeing none, are there any other public comments? Also seeing none, now we'll have board member comments on the 2018-2019 budget. We'll start with Mr. Holmes.
No comment.
Mr. Ulrich.
Just one comment. I'd like to thank the finance staff, Dr. Gruccio and all of her executive team, and the board members who took the time to help dig in, and I think what we have is a compromise on some issues that are going to benefit the district.
Thank you, Mr. Ulrich. Ms. Spinelli.
No comment at this time.
Mr. Media.
Nothing at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Sobrano.
I'd just like to echo Mr. Ulrich's comment and express appreciation to Ms. Haley and her team for hard work on a very, very difficult task.
Thank you. Mr. Jennings.
I'm happy to see the adjustment from the 4% to the 3%, and you know, I think everybody needs to realize that we are educating our children. Education means a lot for our kids, and you know, I work in a prison, so again, I've said this a few times. I see a lot of guys in there that can't read, write, add, and I think a lot of them, if they would have had the opportunity to get a proper education or even a minimal education, I think they would have been better off and maybe wouldn't be in that predicament. And the taxpayers wouldn't be spending $40,000 a year to have a person in jail, and we could be spending an extra $37 a year, hopefully to keep a couple people out of jail. I don't know, that's what I see, and that's my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. Ms. Acosta?
Mrs. Haley, thank you so much for you and your team. You always do such a wonderful job. I know it's not easy, and we do appreciate your hard work, as well as the work of all of the administrators, central administration, that collaborated to try to make do with what we have. I'm grateful to the state for the additional funding that we received. I hope that we continue to get increases in the future. That's the only way that we can try to institute other programs that we would like to institute, but we're going to continue trying with what we have, and I am grateful for everyone's help. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Acosta. Dr. Gruccio?
I'd just like to thank Helen and her team. It takes a lot of time and effort, and I appreciate all that you did.
Thank you, and I have no comments for tonight. I appreciate everybody's time. And motion for adjournment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.